Well, as we do each and every time this time of week, we connect with William Kelly out of Chicago, reporter on the streets, and we hear from him some of what he's seeing happen. But obviously, let's look at some of the headlines from over the past weekend. 2 people killed, 7-year-old boy injured in Garfield Park shooting. Chicago Tribune reporting a 13-year-old shot in Little Italy, according to police. 16-year-old shot in Austin neighborhood. Here's a headline: after armed robbery, South Chicago rallies around beloved El Torrio and raises money well beyond what he lost. That's good to see the community coming together, but people are freaked out. Here's a headline: everyone's so freaked out. Armed robbery crew sweeps city as Chicago police task forces struggle with brazen crime. And you've got this headline: after no victim or witness found, the Chicago Tribune reporting that COPA, which is an oversight panel, closes an investigation of alleged sexual misconduct involving CPD officer and migrants. So those are some of the headlines as we now talk with William Kelly. Thanks for taking time with us each and every week, William. What else are you seeing out there on the streets?
God bless you, Greg. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I believe that there were 45 to 50 people shot in Chicago this weekend. Someone was murdered during an armed robbery gone bad overnight. We have these gangs that are essentially taking over Chicago of armed robbers, some with all armed, some with long guns. They jump out of cars, they run down the street, groups of 8 to 12, 13 to 18-year-olds, taking the backpacks, the cell phones, the valuables of anyone that they see at will, basically without any consequences. No description, no one's in custody. There was a video widely circulated of a man who was simply walking down the street wearing headphones. I try to advise people not to do that. At least only cover one ear, not both ears. And two, I guess you could say, two people jumped him and ran up behind him, hit him in the back of the head. I can tell you, Greg, that's happened to me on multiple occasions, multiple attacks, multiple attackers. No one who's ever attacked me has ever been prosecuted for these crimes. So this is something that I can tell you right now as a reporter. It's getting harder and harder to interview people who have not been the victim of a violent crime, Greg.
So looking at this headline, William, everyone is so freaked out. That's the quote they pull and put in the headline. Before Chicago police can even respond to one robbery scene, more have popped up, leaving dozens upon dozens of victims in their wake. And this is just the most recent headline. We've seen now for, it seems, months, headlines of dozens of armed robberies, people being either hit with the gun, like a pistol whip type of situation, or even worse. But clearly, we really haven't heard much of, hey, all these suspects have been found out. Has there been any indication of either this ring of robbers or individuals or somebody that's been held accountable to any degree?
The only Chicagoan who does not appear to be freaked out by this out-of-control violent crime is Mayor Brandon Johnson. Whenever he's asked, he says, first, give me the money. Give me the money first. Before I give you my plan on how to handle violent crime, first you give me the money. I'm sorry, Greg, but that sounds like something an extortionist would say.
You've got a new police superintendent and somebody who the mayor has said that agrees with his approach to trying to combat violent crime. How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, if he actually follows through on his promise to combat violent crime, I predict he won't be superintendent for very long. There seems to be the root of the problem is we have elected officials in the city of Chicago who believe that the 13-year-old carjacker is the social justice warrior, and the Paul student who just got their backpack full of books and computers stolen is somehow receiving the long overdue justice that they have deserved for generations. This is truly the mentality that we are hearing from our elected officials, and it is very, very disconcerting. I talk to people every day. I'm pursuing a story now currently that I hope to share with your listeners next week. And what I'm hearing is that every the decision that every Chicagoan needs to make is, do I walk to work and risk being the victim of a armed robbery, or do I drive to work and risk being the victim of a carjacking? This is like I don't know. In the past, you would think, do I need a jacket, or do I need an umbrella? Now it's, do I risk being the victim of an armed robbery, or do I risk being the victim of a carjacking?
Well,
This is the new decision.
and you've also got reporting crews with expensive equipment in multiple instances in Chicago of them being victims of these types of armed robberies, and it makes that job of getting out on the streets that much more I guess dangerous, and you've got to take certain precautions. William, have there been increased police presence on the streets?
Oof. Well, as you well know, the police are bogged down babysitting migrants at police stations. A number of police stations have been shut down due to scabies. Now we have, essentially, as a direct result of policies that the Chicago political leaders have been promoting and continue to promote. We have what can only be described as third world violent crime, third world diseases, and now a third world economy. When I walk down the street, I see multiple vendors selling soup out of a big, pot of, I don't know, some kind of soup. I see vendors selling everything from water bottles to other, products labels that I've never seen before at the on and the off ramps of the expressways. So this is, again, a real problem, because we don't, we've tried very, very hard in the city of Chicago to have some type of an actual an economy that is based on the rule of law and all of the codes and regulations that business people have been forced to abide by for certainly for decades now, going by the wayside. And we see it in every neighborhood, as we see stores fleeing the Michigan Avenue and State Street. We see the vacancy rate in downtown Chicago climb as people are not returning to the offices or to the restaurants or the businesses that they used to go to before, during, and after work. Greg.
William, we've got just 1 minute here. Next segment, we're going to look at the latest statements from the governor's office about 41 some odd $million that are going to be going to not just Chicago, but several other Chicago area communities. And that money, $41.5 million, at least in Chicago, the $30 million that they're going to get seems to cover the cost for that base camp tent. Your thoughts on that moving into the winter months here?
Thank you for asking about that, Greg. It's a very disturbing story. I'm investigating that. It's very, very difficult to get any answers. It appears as though, from what I've been told and from my current investigation, that Mayor Johnson made this decision on his own. He signed a contract for $30 million with a company called Garda World, one of the many, I guess you could say, conflicts with this contract that we're still investigating. But my sources tell me Garda World is the same company that brings the migrants to Chicago. So the obvious conflict is, the more migrants they bring to Chicago, the more tents they need. Greg, clearly putting anyone in a tent in Chicago during the winter is the single worst idea, perhaps in the history of Chicago government. And anyone who's ever studied any history knows that any story involving the phrase tent city never ends well. We are moving into a very dangerous third world style operation in the city of Chicago, and I fear for our city. One alderman has already said that she predicts a race war.
Well, William, we'll definitely be talking more about these things in the future. Greatly appreciate you taking the time with us, and be safe out there, all right?
God bless you. Thank you, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News. And
again, I have concerns about, and I've talked to the city about how these base camps would be created. But having said that, the city is on the front lines and dealing with it as best they can, and we want to provide them access to whatever we can.
So the governor on Thursday taking questions from the media about the migrant situation and the continued supports that taxpayers from the state are providing. And Friday, they announced that indeed Illinois is sending $41.5 million to 6 Chicago area governments taking in migrants. To date, taxpayers in the state have spent $328 million to support foreign migrants. So those areas that are getting the money, you've got Chicago getting $30 million, and that seems to match up with how much the city has agreed with Garter World for that tent base camp. The city of Joliet getting $8.6 million, Elgin getting $1.3 million, Lake County getting $1 million, and the city of Urbana $250,000. Oak Park gets $150,000, and this is money that the governor's office says will be used for a variety of different functions, ranging from supports and healthcare and so on. But $41.5 million. So let's hear a little bit more of what the governor had to say when he addressed the members of the media, where he also said he's looking for other cities and municipalities to, quote, volunteer. So here's the governor on Thursday, a little bit more of what he had to say about this situation.
Again, I have concerns about, and I've talked to the city about how these base camps would be created. But having said that, the city is on the front lines and dealing with it as best they can, and we want to provide them access to whatever we can to make it easier.
Respect the mayor. Take migrants.
Yeah, but these people are coming to Chicago. So this starts out as a challenge for the city of Chicago. It's certainly a challenge for everybody in Illinois. It should be thought of as a challenge for the country. And the city has received not just resources from the state, but people, personnel, and a whole lot of effort over the last year. Let me give you an example. We, of course, rented out motel rooms initially as we saw a huge influx of folks in August, September, October, November of last year. And that worked for a little while. It doesn't work well for providing all the services that are necessary. And so we've moved off of that and instead are assisting in every other way we can. But, if you've got buildings available, and I hope that cities will raise their hands and offer assistance. We have provided grant opportunities for cities that will do that, and it's a voluntary endeavor. We're not going to do that unless a city asks us to. We already have. Just that if we have existing facilities, we ought to use all of those that are willing to do it, including, by the way, if there are federal opportunities to do that, great. There are federal buildings that don't have anybody in them. We haven't identified any yet, and the federal government hasn't yet, but we've asked them, even if, even if it's something that's a bit inconvenient for the federal government, they need to step up to the plate. And I've said that repeatedly to the Department of Homeland Security.
So clearly, a lot more to be said about all of this as the state grants $41+ million to 6 communities to handle more migrants as they continue to come in. 15,000 altogether so far just in the past year. But you look at the news over the weekend, and in just one day crossing the southern U.S. border, there's been 10,000 plus So clearly, this is something that's not slowing down when it comes to the issue of migrants crossing the border. Some saying they're seeking asylum, others not even being touched by federal immigration officials. But regardless, they seem to be being sent to cities across the country, including Chicago and now Joliet and Lake County and elsewhere. And they're getting more state tax dollars to deal with that.